So this is the final game of March, and it's probably one of the most important games that I'm going to be playing this year. Fate Stay Night and Fate Grand Order are two of the largest media properties that exist, with Fate Go generating about $7 billion since it started. Needless to say, the company that makes these games, Type Moon, is massive. However, Fate is not where it started. They started with a little game called Tsukihime. So buckle up, folks, as we cover the original Oh god, no, this looks bad. Change of plans. We're covering Tsukihime, A Piece of the Glass Moon. Full spoilers ahead, as we'll be covering the Glass Moon and Moon Princess segments of Tsukihime. A young child who is unaware of how important he will be to shaping destiny in the future hears a commotion awakening him in the middle of the night. He hears strange noises that he can't exactly make out or understand, and an ethereal voice in his head tells him how things could have been different. As he is a child, he has no way of knowing or processing exactly what's happening, only that his mother was struck down in front of him, and as he looks up to the glowing moon, his eyes fill with blood. A young boy wakes up in a hospital bed, and the doctors seem almost surprised that he has awoken. He is informed of the following. His name is Shiki Tono, and he was in a very serious accident. It's frankly a miracle that we're alive, as the doctors did consider him to be dead. However, everything seems off about the surroundings. Red lines seem to be covering everything, and the doctors don't believe us, suggesting that this may be a symptom of brain damage behind our back. A few days go by, and Shiki seems fascinated by these lines as he traces them, then eventually gets an idea. Grabbing a plastic knife, he finds that it fits perfectly into the line, and tracing it along, the bed collapses underneath him. He is scolded for this as they try to figure out exactly how he did this, but the truth is not being believed. Days go by in boredom, sitting in this dreary hospital room, and Shiki finally gets sick of it. He runs out of the hospital to a nearby plane where he meets a woman with long, flowing red hair that isn't from anything important. Get out of here, you don't matter right now! She tells him that her name is Aoko Ozaki, and spends her day talking to him as if he weren't a child. And I imagine this would probably be very refreshing for Shiki to be talked to on equal grounds as he starts sneaking out daily to talk to Aoko, a change to his boring routine. On one of these particular days, Shiki decides to show Aoko his special trick as he traces the lines of a tree to making it fall over, and smacking him across the face for these actions. She explains that his ability is very special and should never be used for destruction. However, she can help him manage it. And the next day, she shows up at the same place with a set of glasses for him that seem to make the lines disappear, filling him with glee, as I can only imagine how stressful seeing these lines every day would be. He compares it to magic, which Aoko seems tickled by, and explains that she is indeed a magic user, and that Shiki has his own form of magic that allows him to see the end of all things. Despite her harsh words, she tells him that his gift is his to use how he pleases, and they share this one moment. Shiki understands internally this will be the last time they ever meet, and he goes inside from the plane, being told that he'll be living with a new family going forward. This prologue hit me a little bit as I recognized the importance of this woman, though I wasn't sure what Mihoyo was at the time of release. However, I do feel quite bad for Shiki. I spent a lot of my childhood grounded, as I was a bit of a troublemaker and generally had unruly parents, spending day after day in my room with nothing to do. It's awful. I couldn't imagine what it would be like to be stuck in a fucking hospital. No one to talk to other than underpaid nurses, then finding a link to humanity, Aoko, to guide him. Even if only temporary, means so much to how he's going to develop as a character going forward. Even if he, and both me, could never imagine how this story would develop or turn out. 7 years later. It's an early morning as Shiki is taking the train to school. He learned the previous day that his father had passed away, and as such, he will finally be allowed to come home. And as he's contemplating the coming future, a young woman with blue hair boards the train. This is CL, an upperclassman that Shiki has met the previous week, but had become somewhat close to. If you ask Alex, then this is Best Girl. I disagree. However, we'll be meeting Best Girl later in the route. Arriving at school, it seems like it'll be another normal day till his best friend Inui Arahiko barges in uncharacteristically early. Apparently, he's showing up early due to a series of murders that have been occurring in town. This conversation catches the attention of another classmate of ours, Yumozika Satsuki, who tells us that these are the vampire killings, and the victims were drained of their blood. Now from here, the plot's going to really start to branch out, and there's tons of ways this can go. So I'm going to be recounting how my playthrough went so that it feels unique. And if you want to see the other stuff, go play the game. Even though we're invited to eat lunch with an upperclassmate and Arihiko, we do decide to stay in the class as Shiki doesn't always have the biggest appetite despite being anemic like a dumbass. And Satsuki tells us that a teacher does need to talk about our current living situation change. After getting grilled, he decides to head to the dining room to grab some bread, cause nutrients are very important. Arihiko sees us and checks in on us to making sure that we're going to be okay, considering everything, and we've been back in 7 years. And I really like these scenes with Arihiko, as even if he isn't a big figure in this particular route, he still is a really good guy who just cares about his buddy. After the school day ends, we decide that it's best that we just head back. These CGs and backgrounds are gorgeous. In the original Tsukihime, they kind of just drop rough-looking figures over photos of backgrounds, and it just doesn't look as good, though. From what I'm seeing, there is a ton of debates over the soul of it all. I don't know, man. It doesn't really look good to me. Like, if you compare CL from the original to CL in the remake, it's night and day. Hell, I would say these are just different people. Now, I'm kind of going beat by beat here, and I want you to read Tsukihime if you haven't, so I'm still going to give the major plot deals as I go, but you're not going to get to know about the intricacies of character interactions because I'm the one writing the video. He walks up to the giant mansion and makes his way inside, being greeted by a maid that he doesn't know, meeting an odd fellow that I hope doesn't stab us in the back later, and getting to meet our sister, Akiha. It's been many years, and she's no longer the little girl we used to play with. She's hardened and very formal, and she spends most of the night dressing down Shiki on his manners, telling him that he will have a very strict curfew, then proceeds to ask for the thing in our pocket that symbolizes our youth. What the fuck does that mean? Oh, my cell phone? I'd really rather not. Sure, I guess. We're also introduced to our maids by name, Hisui and Kohaku. I personally really like Kohaku. And before the night ends, he goes up to the attic, looking around and finding a mysterious package that we do seem to recognize. And from what research I've done, will be revealed in the sequel, Tsukihime: The Other Side of the Red Garden, which hasn't come out yet. And day 1 ends. There are 13 days, and if I went full in depth, this video would be 13 hours, as it took me 25 hours to read this route. Going forward, I read the rest in voice calls with my buddy Alex, or Cape_Mighty on Twitter, who I recommend checking out, as he is quite entertaining and cool. Day 2, I would call rather uneventful, but it does set up some very important things going forward. A new teacher shows up to the school named Noelle, who seems to come on to us, which is, how old is Shiki? 18? Still weird. Due to some delays, he makes it home a little later than intended, getting yelled at by Akiha and getting his allowance lowered. And before the night is up, he has a conversation with this odd man named Goto Saiki, though he prefers to be called Saiki. He talks about how he detests our sister's policy, then just walks out of the room. We then head to bed, but are abruptly woken up at night by a loud howling noise. Looking through our gate, he sees a body in the street, being stabbed by a mysterious figure which makes him run back inside. The next morning at breakfast, he asks about the howling, though both his sister and the maid seem to have no clue what he's talking about. And as he's about to leave, he receives both his cell phone from Kohaku and from Hisui, a small wooden box holding a fruit knife that his father wanted him to have. Odd, but I'll take it since it's a rather nice knife. At school, it's reported that 2 students have apparently gone missing, both a girl and a boy. And midway through the day, his anemia starts to act up, forcing him to leave early. Midway through the walk, he realizes he has gone the wrong way, and as he gets up to correct his way, he meets her. In that moment, Shiki loses all sense of self. He stalks her home, using his vision to cut through the lock to her building using his eyes, then finds her apartment, knocking, and as soon as he answers, cutting her into 17 pieces on the ground. Shiki finally comes to and falls to his knees retching, definitely contaminating the scene with his handprints, his tears, his vomit. He just committed murder. He killed a human being for no reason other than existing and catching his eye. And he feels sick, as he should. He tells himself it was just a dream, and wakes up in his own bed with Hisui standing over him. According to her, he acted perfectly normal, though his clothes had to be washed as they found him sleeping in the park where his outfit had become quite dirty. Shiki wakes up with no appetite after the previous day, instead forcing his way out of the mansion despite Hisui's complaints and heading to school. As he's continuing to convince himself that nothing actually happened and was all a dream, his blood runs cold seeing something impossible. Her. The woman from the previous day is sitting by the gate, staring right at him. Panic starts filling him, and he runs as hard and fast as he can. He eventually makes it to a back alleyway, panting and trying not to die, but she managed to catch up with him. She corners him and admits that she was originally planning to kill him for what he did, but she's taken an interest in him, introducing herself as Arcuid Bernestat. She offers him a deal for his life of having him help her in the extermination of a high-level vampire, but they're interrupted by some kind of panther and a horde of creatures. Arcuid easily takes care of them, showing just how devastatingly strong she truly is, then tells Shiki the truth. Because he killed her, he's severely limited her strength, and as such, she needs him as a shield. He's left with no choice but to agree. As the opening plays, all I can say is, how is there no Tsukihime anime? These animations are gorgeous, and I would happily sit down through an entire 2 to 4 seasons of this to see some of the amazing fights in animation. I can't play the music, but I can definitely show the footage, hopefully, and I love how the opening shows off hints of what the Moon Princess arc entails, while not giving away its ending. However, the other thing I find interesting is the remake of Tsukihime is more of a reboot, introducing new characters, new fights, reworking arcs, and introducing a new major villain through the story. I really hope that the next arc will satisfy me as much as this one has. After the opening is done, he is taken to a high-class hotel, where Arcuid has rented out the entire top floor for privacy's sake and security. She promptly passes out here, and we get our first major choice in the route. Now, I got every dead end as I went, but I'll only be covering 2 of them as they're extremely story important. So, he chooses to stay in that room, passing out, proving he's not a very good bodyguard. And he has a dream. Akiha is crying, and Shiki's covered in blood. But whatever it is, he wakes up before he can remember more. Once we awaken, Arcuid reprimands us for falling asleep, then starts what I'm going to refer to as a type moon dump. This is a rather long speech about the nature of vampires. By the way, Arcuid is a vampire. And their hierarchy. I'm not going to recount the entire thing, but the important details is that there are 2 types. True ancestors who are born vampires, and dead apostles who turn into vampires. She does ask Shiki how he was able to kill her, and he tells her about the lines which she describes as death perception, the ability to see the end of all things, and the natural law of the universe itself. The other important detail is that she admits to never having drank human blood before, being barely a vampire, admittedly. Shiki does start to feel the room heating up, though Arcuid isn't noticing it, and looking at the security, fire is starting to spread through the hotel. A vampire is approaching. Shiki rushes to defend her, cutting through some dead things, the Inferno approaching. However, he cannot move, so Arc rushes to his defense, fighting him off, but catching his name before he goes, using a mysterious golden eye technique on him. Vlav Archangel. That's fucking edgy. Arc passes out into his arms, so he takes her back to the apartment where we cut her into pieces, which has got to be awkward, where he eventually passes out again, not thinking about his sister who wanted him to be home by 6 p.m. She is definitely going to murder him when he gets back. The next morning arrives, and Shiki wakes up to noise from the kitchen, realizing he's in Arcuid's apartment. She notices that he is up, but upon greeting him promptly passes out from her wound that she sustained. Checking the damage, he gets an idea of how stupid Arcuid really is, as she used packing tape to cover it, hoping it would heal. And at this moment, I started being endeared to this ditzy girl in the same way that people like himbos. Shiki does manage to treat the wound, surprised by the fact that a vampire this strong can barely take care of herself. Or cook, based on the pile of random shit that she made Shiki. And here we get another very important type moon dump. Vlav is an ancestor, one of 27 vampires that act as the ruler to their society. Every ancestor has a unique principle or ability, and we can surmise that Vlav's ability is either to control the flames or has something to do with them in the very least. Now that Arc is aware of the nature of Vlav, she decides in 3 days' time she will be strong enough to take on Vlav herself. However, as Shiki looks to the TV, a news broadcast talks about the 200 dead victims, and he gains a sense of survivor's guilt over this. He needs to care for this personally, so him and Arc make a plan. They go to the park and wait for chaos. Then they'll take him on together and kill him. As they're waiting, we're interrupted for a brief moment with a bit of Vlav's perspective. He's cold, freezing even. He can barely even think straight at this point. His mind is only thinking of blood. Whatever the original objective was, it is long gone, and all he wants is chaos. So he's going to make it. He unleashes his ghouls and zombies and sparks an inferno downtown. Now, I'm not about to surmise this entire fight, otherwise you'd have no reason to go read Tsukihime yourself, but in this moment, it felt like I was reading Fullmetal Daimon Muramasa again. The fights are super kinetic and excellently described, creating a clear visual in your mind that's aided by the graphics on screen during battle scenes. And Shiki is able to reason that Vlov's ability isn't that of fire. He is simply so cold that it magically makes the fire appear around him, attempting to heat him up as the cold is extremely painful to him. Near the end, he starts to create a temperature of absolute 0. So in one last bid, Shiki has Arcuid throw him on a rock behind him, so he can get in close and cut through a death line with the last of his energy. He sustains heavy injuries, and Arcuid uses Vlov's flesh to heal him as he passes out, ending the first major arc of Arcuid's story. Afterwards, we do see some detective types investigating what's going on, but that'll be important later. Now, I'm going to say from here, the story really kicks off. If any of this appeals to you, or you think you have any modicum of interest, stop watching. Go buy the game. Read it. Enjoy it. This could be your first visual novel. If you have doubts about visual novels, please don't. You really get to experience peak storytelling. And if you like what you've seen so far, a sub, like, or comment is always appreciated. If you want to support me financially, I do have Patreon. $5 gets your name in the video, $10 gets a message included with your name. And for those of you who are sticking around or have already read Tsukihime, let's continue. Somehow, he wakes up at home with Hisui standing over him, a little earlier than usual as he's been missing for 48 hours. It is actually a miracle that he is alive at all, and that Akihide didn't stab him in his sleep. He hobbles his way on a cane to the tea room and apologizes profusely. And, yeah, I give her shit as a scary woman that will kill you for the slightest small thing. But I feel that she was grateful to see her brother again. I don't know what I'd do if any of my siblings disappeared for a full 48 hours, and I had no way to reach out to them. It's really scary shit, actually. Wounds treated by Kohaku, and he gets to spend the rest of the day exploring the mansion. I chose to explore the garden, where Shiki remembers playing with Akihide as a little kid, wondering whatever happened to those days, and he finds himself thinking of Arcuid, how scary those days were, yet how much fun he had. He almost seems to be filled with sorrow that it's over. Another early morning, and Arcuid is really hanging in Shiki's mind. It really seems like his life is going to be dull compared to what his last few days looked like. Some more of what I assume is foreshadowing Akihide's route in Farside, and he goes to school trying to settle back into normality. At school, Miss Noel excuses his absence, blaming it on his anemia, then tries prying into his accident and scar. Made violently uncomfortable, Shiki runs back to class, and looking at his phone, he sees the headline, "An Object Horror." Another victim of the vampire murders was found. Vlov wasn't the killer. And why would he have been? The previous victims were drained of blood. Vlov was leading charred bodies in his path. After school, Shiki looks around town for Arcuid for at least an hour, but is having no luck. However, to his horror, he receives a text from Kohaku. A blonde woman is in his home, claiming to be his girlfriend. He sprints to the house harder than he ever has, likely suffering an anemia attack, or at the very least looking like Mob attempting to run. Arcuid is in his tea room, staring down Akahu, who's staring her back. And here it is, my favorite moment of the entire visual novel for comedy, as Arcuid looks at Shiki talking about how he ravaged her body, and the leader of this billion-dollar company just looks so fucking horrified. When I was reading this, I kind of had to stop for a moment because I couldn't breathe. And Shiki pulls Arcuid out of the mansion, demanding to know what the fuck she was thinking, absolutely furious knowing that Akihide is definitely going to kill him. They discuss that Vlov was an outside element that wasn't planned for, and was indeed not the vampire they were hunting. And Shiki agrees to help Ark look for the vampire they're hunting, because that's definitely the only reason. There's nothing else that could be happening right now in a teenage boy's mind. Around 11 p.m., they call it good for the night, not having found anything, and Arcuid notice how drained Shiki is. It appears that using his eyes too often will drain him, as mortals are not supposed to peer into the veil between death and humanity. But this is followed up with another type moon dump going into the various grades of undead. Grades 1 to 3 are the dead, 4 to 5 have free will but aren't free, and 6 would be vampires like Arcuid or Vlov, as well as a section talking about how all magic in the world goes to roots that are supposedly clustered in various spots, such as a major one in Tokyo, I believe. I read that section a few weeks ago, so I'm a little bit blanking on the details there. And afterwards, he makes his way back home, once again passing out. The next morning, Shiki makes his way down to the tea room, trying to be as cheerful as possible, but immediately gets his attempts cut aside, being grilled as to who that woman was. Shiki chooses to be a fucking dickhead, saying who he dates is his choice, and it shouldn't matter to Akiha, as she's barely even his real sister, which you can't excuse it. It's an outright dick move to say. Akiha clearly cares for him, wanting him home early so he doesn't get murdered, and brought him back into the house out of the goodness of her heart, and he just throws it in her face like she doesn't matter. I feel rather heated about this, having read the entirety of Ark's route. Like, at the time, I was making my jokes about how she's gonna break out the guillotine for Shiki, but it's not fucking cool, dude. I'm sorry for getting a little heated there. On his way out of the mansion and making his way down the street, he meets a cop named Ando Yogo, and looking into everything going on. And his oddly child-sized partner, Mario. As Shiki is smart, he doesn't say shit to the feds, and makes his way to school. Midway through the day, Shiki happens to look outside the window, noticing that Arcuit is staring at him from the track. He immediately panics and tries to hyper-focus on class in an attempt to make her go away. Instead, she dons a pair of glasses, going to every class in school to find him, and using her mystic eyes to trick everyone in the school to believe that she's a substitute. And just imagining this, like, ditzy vampire hottie breaking into class is so fucking good. Walks in, hey, I'm your sub! Shiki isn't here? Fuck y'all. She mentions that she was in the middle of investigating and felt like dropping in on him, so he shoos her away before she gets him in trouble. At lunch, Ki asks Arahiko if he knows any dangerous places in town, and he mentions a nearby abandoned hospital where 2 Yankees went missing. I'm just going to clarify for those who don't know, I don't mean like Americans when I say Yankees. It's a subculture in Japan of young men or women who dress in leather while listening to loud rebellious music and being in motorcycle gangs. There's actually a very fun side story in Yakuza 0 about this. When Shiki drops by the hospital, he doesn't seem to find anything dangerous, and some theories suggest that this was the hospital that Shiki stayed in, which burnt down. But unless it's confirmed in Ciel's route, I can't confirm it right now. That night, he meets Arcuit at the park, who is pissed that he was late by 10 minutes, despite the fact that she's been hanging around the park since 7 o'clock like an idiot. They check out 5 locations that might all end up being dead ends. However, the 6th has something that will become more relevant later. Mutants. A strange creature with the body of a man yet the head of a spider, and it shoots out tentacles at Shiki, but he cuts through them easily. Arcuit jumps into the fight but gets blown aside. This throws Shiki into a rage, who cuts it into pieces. And Arcuit can't help but giggle at the fact that he's willing to throw himself at danger when she's nigh immortal. Later that night at the park, before disbanding, Arcuit does mention that due to the nature of his eyes, it's not something that just manifested from the accident. He was most likely born this way, and the rest of his bloodline is this way, to which I say we'll probably learn about in Far Side of Akiha's roots. However, oddly enough, Shiki's scar does start to bleed, and Arcuit looks severely uncomfortable running away into the night. As she had previously stated, she's never drank blood before, and I imagine she'd want to avoid the temptation. As Shiki heads home, he suddenly senses a strange presence. A shadowy figure that starts to spar with him, perfectly matching his blows and pushing him back with ease. About to take him down before a blade strikes the creature, sending it flying back. A few more knives thrown and it's seemingly finished off. And as we look up to see who threw these blades, his blood runs cold. Noelle is wearing a nun's outfit and wielding a giant spear. Shiki managed to assess that she is part of a group that Ark has previously mentioned, the Executors, a member of the church that specifically hunts and kills vampires. He starts to prepare for a fight, but is knocked over with no effort at all. She assesses him to have no vampirism and starts interrogating him, trying to figure out why he's following a vampire like Arcuit around. He tries explaining what's going on, but it's clear that Noelle doesn't believe him in the slightest, letting him know that this particular vampire wasn't after Arcuit's minions, but after Shiki himself. Whoever the killer is, they're approaching Shiki and fast. He'll need to take them out before they can take him out. Shiki ends up passing out outside the mansion, once again seeing the Bizarre Panther. And I know what you're going to ask, and the answer is, I don't know, it's probably going to be answered on Far Side. So day 9 gets a little weird, as this day has 2 dead ends that are extremely story important. However, the true nature of one of those endings is not going to be revealed until the end, so let's talk about the day. That night, Shiki once again has that dream of his hands covered in blood, adults approaching him and asking him if he killed the boy. It's becoming clear to Shiki that this memory is what his father forced him to forget. And as he gets up, he immediately collapses from the previous night's escapade, definitely not going to make it to school in this condition. He's forced to get a medical checkup from Kohaku, as she's the most consistent in this house, and after, he's free to do some exploring. Now, we're going to go a little non-canon and go up to Mikahasa's study. Using his eyes, he cuts the lock and enters. This room feels suffocating, completely dark and covered in chains. Opening his father's desk, he finds a strange note detailing his condition. A knife juts out from our chest, and we turn to see our assailant. Goto Saiki. Wait, hold on. No, that's not what happened. Shiki actually went out to the garden, where he remembered playing with his sister as a kid, marking various locations as Shiki or Akiha. However, in the very top of the gazebo is a sign that says, "Beware of your brother." However, he doesn't remember engraving it. At that moment, he spots one of the maids going out to the field, and he follows and finds himself in a clearing, where suddenly his scar opens, pouring out blood, as he starts to remember the incident again. Blood on his hands, his sister crying, somebody's body, but whose? And he loses consciousness. He wakes up that night, surrounded by his sister, who's admonishing the maids for Shiki ending up this way, making it clear how much she cares despite the rude shit that he said yesterday. However, he remembers his promise to Arcuid and forces himself up after everyone goes to bed, going to the park where Arcuid tells him off for being in such a condition and that he needs to take care of himself. He makes his way home and he finally sleeps. Not feeling much better the next day, but still needing to go to school, he forces himself up, his fever getting worse, the lightheadedness getting worse. Something is wrong, and he collapses, harder than he ever has. This isn't just anemia, this is something far worse. He's taken home and collapses in the front entrance, where he's picked up by Hisui. However, she isn't taking him to his room, the direction's all wrong. And he lays there on a blue carpet, looking into a dark room as his consciousness fades, and he stops thinking. I have some theories on this one, but I'll need to either wait for Far Side, or read the original Tsukihime to read Akiha's route, as this doesn't seem to be answered in Arcuid's route, and as of March 18th when I'm writing and recording this section, I'm only on day 4 of CL's route. But that's not what really happened. Shiki went to bed like his sister commanded. No thoughts of Arcuid, for he's simply too tired to even attempt. I would say day 9 is probably my second favorite day, behind tomorrow. Shiki wakes up with Arc staring at him in his bed, freaking him out. She's royally pissed off at him for abandoning her last night, and as such, as payment, he's gonna take her out on a date today. And this is my favorite day in Tsukihime's Moon Princess route. Arcuid is wearing an adorable outfit, and they go to the movies together, and we learn a lot about their characters. Shiki talks about how he hates the idea of what-ifs, as he prefers the broader picture of things, and Arcuid is learning about the idea of how she should appreciate smaller things in life. She only gets to wake up every 100 years or so, and it's when she's hunting that she gets to come back. So she's never gotten to do these kinds of things. She's never gotten to just sit down in this mall and eat a burger. She hasn't gotten to appreciate movies or art or anything like that, really. She just wakes up, hunts, then goes back to sleep. But since she's met Shiki, it's all changed. She eventually tells us the name of the one we're hunting, Michael Roa Valdemjong. The very name is enough to change her attitude. She's gone from carefree and fun to shaky and serious. So they change the scenery. Breaking into Shiki's school, they sit in a classroom talking about what it means to live. Arcuid admits that since Shiki killed her, she's been far more emotional than usual, and it's a little odd for her to care as much as she has. Shiki talks about his purpose for being alive is the act of being alive itself. It doesn't matter if something is fun or meaningful, purely the act of living fills him with joy. And they promise to come back here after everything is done, Shiki insisting they will, as he doesn't like what-ifs. I think this scene is amazingly well written. While the fights are really well done, some of my favorite parts are just talking between characters. Everyone refers to Shiki differently, and as such, everyone also talks to him differently. However, it feels as if Arcuid doesn't care about any of that. She talks to Shiki in the most honest and open way possible, and the scenes to follow, however, are quite upsetting. Later at the park, Shiki makes an offhand comment about how Arcuid's barely a vampire, as she's never even drank blood, and Arcuid gets this look on her face as she approaches. Her hot breath on his neck, her grip getting tighter as she approaches, and in this moment, Shiki understands something. He is in the presence of a monster. He is not safe. So he does the only thing he can, and he screams. As soon as he does, a familiar-looking blade separates them. The church has come. Arcuid panics, running away as she realizes what she's done, and Mario comes out of the shadows, having a little sit-down with Shiki. This is a shorter type moon dump, but it's important, so I gotta give maximum context. Roa is one of the 27 lords. He was searching for immortality, and eventually he found a way to do it. Every time he dies, his spirit reincarnates into another person's body. Then, when they come of age, he'll violently manifest in their body, taking over in an attempt to take over the world. He always chooses someone connected to a powerful family and someone who has access to special abilities, like Shiki's eyes. With that, Mario was willing to let him go pursue Arcuid, knowing that Shiki is no danger to them. He takes off his glasses, following the lines of death, till he eventually finds her in a back alley, surrounded by dead zombies and blood, a single gold eye staring into Shiki's soul, affecting him. And Shiki goes bloodlusted. I'm going to put a disclaimer here, but the following scene, while not outright stated, deals with the theme of sexual assault. I don't like this scene for what it is, but I respect for what it truly shows about these two. So, using the following timestamp, you can skip past it if the following topic or scene would be upsetting to you. Thanks for watching. Shiki tackles and straddles Arcuid, ripping her clothes off and starting to froth at the mouth. He bites her and contemplates cutting her into pieces again, a look of fear in her eyes as she's only just come to. Thankfully, Shiki manages to recover, and Arcuid admits that it's better if they never meet again. And I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here, but this scene feels wrong here to me. Sure, if you're in the visual novel community, you're going to see memes about companies like Clock Up, Black Psych, or even memes about the Rants visual novels. And it's just weird that sexual assault is very prevalent, and it's not great that a topic like this is normalized the way that it is. However, at the end of the day, in the visual novels where it is prevalent and happening a lot, it's usually a drop in the bucket to a bigger problem that's going on. But with something like this, it feels too real, really. This is someone who's put their trust in you. Arcuid trusts you with her life, even though you took it from her, and Shiki tried to violate her. There's a reason she left. These two are a match made in hell. I love them as a pair, but they're ever only going to bring out the worst in each other. And it's for the best that she leaves till she's ready to trust him again. However, we still have 3 days left. So let's wrap this thing up, huh? Sorry for the little rant. Disclaimer's over. Let's continue. The next day, Shiki wakes up feeling like shit knowing what he did, as he should. And he has no choice but to force himself back into his routine. When he arrives, people are buzzing that Miss Noelle lived, and Shiki is finding that no one seems to remember a third year that he knew, but he can't place their name. It's right there, but just can't put a word to it. After school, he goes to the site where Vlav died, and a young woman approaches him, talking about Arcuid. This is a huge type moon dump about vampires, so the TLDR is, great apostles feel a psychological stress if they don't drink blood. If Arcuid had 10 units of energy, half would be devoted to not drinking blood and the rest to fighting. However, Shiki cut her down to more like 7 units of energy, where 5 were devoted to protecting him and 3 were devoted to not drinking blood. Once a great apostle drinks blood, they become a monster who can never stop, or at least, that's the theory. Then, a big revelation. As the stranger is talking, Shiki starts to see a palace made of crystal, with a mysterious woman in it that almost looks like Arcuid, but too regal. Arcuid belongs to a royal family of vampires. She was the Princess of the Moon, or the Tsukahime, raised to kill renegade apostles, till eventually she killed her family. She's now a tool to kill other vampires, though from what's understood, she hasn't talked or emoted in quite some time. She's a soulless killing husk who only exists to kill, and after 800 years of not drinking, she's at her limits. She's going to eventually snap and will have to be put down. Shiki doesn't believe this and runs away, still looking for Arcuid. He goes to the park where they used to meet, hoping that she's going to show, and thankfully, at 3 a.m. she does. She looks betrayed still, extremely hurt, as she should be, and she feels that it's her fault for what happened the previous night. But Shiki doesn't care. He's just happy to see her. He hugs her close, admitting that he's in love with her, and she accepts him back. And later that night, she admits something. She hasn't felt emotion in some time, and in that moment that Shiki cut her into pieces, she was filled with rage. Never has someone taken up so much space in her mind. Never has she been so angry at one person. It's safe to say, she loved him from the beginning. They make love that night, seemingly the previous night forgotten. And as he lays there dreaming, Arcuid asks Shiki what would he do if she started drinking blood. He somehow manages to respond through his dream that it wouldn't matter as he hates what ifs, and when he wakes up, a note on his bedside table saying goodbye. She's gone to hunt Roa. He feels like a husk of a person, a cicada shell with no inside or purpose. He stays late in the school, unsure of what to do. Arcuate is gone. There's nothing left except for him. Roa. If he hunts him down, their paths are sure to meet again. As he's making his way out of the school, looking up to the moon, his scar starts to bleed, and he whips around to see a shadowy figure. They clash knives till the figure tells him, "You're not the only one who can see the lines," then stabs him in the chest, and in that moment, the face becomes clear to him. He remembers who this is. The mysterious vampire has been killing everyone. Michael Roa Valdemjong was the boy that they used to play with as kids. Shiki Tono. He is now reincarnated inside of this boy's body, and a crash sounds as a woman with blue hair crashes through the window, managing to fight Roa. Mario's voice comes from inside of Ciel, demanding to know where his research is, and in exchange, they'll let him go. He tells them they'll never get it, as Mario's master will never achieve physical immortality, and that his research changed to the soul. Ordered to fall back, the woman grabs Shiki and flees. She assures him that he'll live, as Akiha can heal him, which is why he did not die 7 years ago. And his consciousness fades. He wakes with Akiha over him, looking worried. And when pressed, we get the big type moon dump for this arc. Shiki Tono #1 was the firstborn son of the Tonos, followed by Akiha. However, when Shiki was a small child, he was adopted by the Tonos for reasons that we don't fully know. Akiha assumes he was amused that this kid had the same name, and they all lived peacefully. However, Shiki one day inverted, I'm assuming it's going to be answered in Farside, extremely early, attacking Shiki too. The family panicked and figured out there was only one thing to do. Say that the Shiki one that was born into this family was actually the adopted one, and that he had died from a mysterious disease. Then Shiki 2 would be claimed as a blood member of the family. However, due to his accident that he had been in, he would be disowned, making Akiha the head of the family, as an adopted family member could never be the head of the family. He is forced to lay back down for a bit, and then when he tries standing, he is all but paralyzed. The nun comes in asking an important question. Is Shiki still planning to go after Roa? He is. He loves Arcuate too much to let her fight him alone, and a rustling outside confirms her suspicions. Arcuate was listening. The woman grabs Shiki, and they leave, going to the school together. And I'm sure you want to know how this final fight goes. But, what if I don't? What if I just don't tell you? What if I make you spend $40 on Tsukihime? Or I guess you could just, click off this video to find another person. Wait, no, don't do that. I'll share. Okay, I'm sorry. Arcuate is inside of the school fighting against Roa. She tries using a technique that dissipates his entire body, however, his feet get spared, and he manages to fully heal, striking down Arcuate and cutting through her death lines. Shiki holds her close, and he tells her that she needs to drink, save her life, and take his. It's no different if you were to eat a bird or a fish, and strength will lead to salvation. And with her last words, she tells him that she doesn't like what ifs, despite the fact that she said before there's salvation to be found in what ifs. He can't help but half laugh about it, saying he quite enjoys them, even when it's philosophical bullshit, and how there's a sense of salvation to be found in them. They kiss one last time, and she dies in his arms. Shiki loses it and takes off his glasses, approaching Roa and asking, "Can you see the lines in things that aren't alive?" He gets confused by this question, and Shiki stabs the ground, telling him to witness true death, as he makes the building crumble beneath him. And as he tries walking away, Roa grabs him, still alive. However, the nun steals our kill, saying that she'll be taking credit for it, which is just not cool. That's kill stealing, dude. That's not fun. The end of the next day comes, and Shiki waits in class. He promised her that they'd meet here after the whole thing was done. And right as he's about to leave, she shows up. Since it's been 800 years, she's eventually going to give in to her urges, so it's best she just goes to sleep now and never wakes up again. But before she goes, she has one more thing to say. She lied to Shiki. Once 800 years ago, she was tricked into drinking someone's blood, a young boy named Michael Roa Valdemjong. And when Roa was struck down, his powers returned to her, letting her revive. However, with all that power, she's going to need to drink again soon, and she doesn't want to doom this world like that. She tells Shiki that she loves him, and that she wants him to live a good life, and as he walks out of the school, he looks up to the moon and tells her that he's going to live the rest of his life as good as he can going forward. Oh dear God, this is the longest script I've ever written. This is 11 pages at size 11 font. Just once I've hit this part specifically, that is 7,738 words. And the next video is gonna be longer as the CL route is substantially longer. So I'm not gonna go through the whole good and bad thing because I'm not finished yet, but at the very least I can give this first route its score. At a playtime of 25 hours, I give the Moon Princess route of Tsukihime Piece of the Glass Moon a 10 out of 10. I have no idea how long it's going to be till the next video is out, as I'm still working on the route itself, so it might be a week or two, but you're going to get a 4th video this month. That is a promise. For now, thanks for watching. Be the change you want to see in the world. But what if there was another way? We'd just have to go back, wouldn't we? This is the reality I've created.